All right, I think the next thing is to move on and take care of the wiring and the plumbing. So I think what I'd like to do first is pull out all of the tanks, pull out the deck here. There's looks like 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4 that hold that deck down. And once we've pulled those out, I'm gonna go and inspect all of the piping inside the tanks, the clunk, the UAT piping inside that. Once I'm happy, put that down, back in place, and then it'll be time to deal with all of this wiring. They did a good job, I think, of muxing all of your wires so that, you know, your gear, aileron, rudder, all of those are here. So this technically would be your receiver channels go through here, and all your power stuff goes through this back. I am thinking that I'm gonna go with a smooth flight in here. There's a JR retract control in the bottom, so I'm gonna probably keep that. And let's see if I can zoom back out. Right over here, this looks like some sort of light controller. Maybe keep that too. That's for the light in the nose gear. So this is what it looks like down here. Not too bad. You can see we have this is our vent, obviously UAT. That's the line that goes to the turbine. But the wiring here is not so bad. I guess they have their own multifunction control board down here. And there is the JP-ER120 controller. So what I'm gonna do in here is clean up the wiring, take this apart. Yeah, now the real work begins. So I'm able to pull out the tank, but to pull that out, there are these blocks that are sort of just flimsily glued to the fuselage. That was one. There's another one opposite it, and essentially that's what was keeping this tank in place. Maybe the top deck as well, but I don't like that. I can't imagine that with the full tank of gas, 1800 cc's, that thing sloshing around. I mean, that's just, I don't know. I don't like it. So I'm gonna have to figure out a better way to secure the tank. Okay, so I opened up the UAT. Let's zoom in here. And this is what I found. It's not too bad. The only thing I'm gonna recommend here is to tie wrap this. The other thing I'm going to point out is this would be the way the tank fills from the UAT, and I was just able to pull that out with my hands without a lot of force. So that tells me that these are going to need to be tie wrapped. So that connection, and potentially these. It's just good habit to tie wrap those or wire wrap them so that they stay in place. I changed my mind. So regarding the UAT, this is sort of the pipe that was in there, and it's a fairly narrow pipe, and you can see that the hole that it's supposed to go into, it just like it literally slips in and out pretty easily. And I think that when this is tightened, maybe it holds it in place, but I'm just gonna get a slightly wider brass tube, and that should also just go right into this yellow tubing and avoid the need for a second tubing. And I think I'll like that better, and it'll just make me feel happier that I'm not gonna get leaks through in here with the UAT full and whatnot. Wound up with, I do like that a lot better. And these brass tubes are available at Home Depot, and now that is a really tight fit through this rubber gasket. So tie wrap that, and we're gonna call this done. So here's the finished product. I like that much cleaner. I've wire wrapped both ends, really short tubing, and with this brass tube that really fits, so there's no room for this to slide in or out. I like that. So these 2 screws just go into the rubber, and I guess they help hold it in place and prevent fuel from leaking through that. So that's good. I'm gonna stick this back in the UAT, and then tighten everything back up, and this one's gonna be pretty much done. I will wire up this end, just to be cautious. And then we'll call this. The UAT is almost done. I wire wrap this, and how I like to do it is just right behind the barb, so that when you cinch down the cable, it really just holds onto the cable. Wire wrap that, and that's good to go. And then I tighten this screw just enough so that the rubber here expands, because it's got a similar piece of metal on the opposite side, and when you tighten this, it squishes that rubber and making it bulge up, and that's what seals the gap in here so that there's no leaks. So I just tighten that nice and good, not too much, you don't want to overdo it, and that's done. So what's gonna come here next is the line from the tanks onto here, and then I'll tie wrap that, but I'm gonna wait till I put this back in the jet so I can figure out exactly how much tubing I need. So I'm gonna shift my attention to the tank. I unscrewed that Phillips head, and basically wiggling this out slowly, just carefully. That comes apart, and you can see that's your vent, which is angled up, and then the clunk. So this pretty much looks good, and all I'm gonna do again is add my tie wraps, and remember, right at the barb, so that when you cinch down the tubing, the whole point is to make sure it can't pull out. So I'm gonna wire wrap that, wire up this, and that one's pretty much done. So not too much work to be done there, so that's good. I have wire wrapped the clunk. I've also wire wrapped where that clunk gets into the pipe. So I'm happy with that. I'm gonna stick that back in here. And when I stick this back, I need to make sure that this guy goes towards the top of the tank. So that's just like that. I'm gonna tie this down, and this is practically done. Now that my tanks, which are tank over there, UAT over there, those are sort of done, I'm happy with them in the state they're in. So I opened this up and I was in here, and I realized that the way that the fuel tank was getting held was with a couple of flimsy pieces of wood that go into that spot and that spot, and then in the back there was sort of this block of wood that was just preventing the tank, but it had kind of leaned. So I added some new hot glue in there. This area doesn't get hot. This is the cool area of the turbine, so that should be fine, but I'll keep an eye on it. But the other thing that I did, which I think is really cool, is... Cool, man, cool! That's Bob. Is I added some Velcro to that block of wood in the back. So you can see that right here. This is a Velcro strip. And then I also added some Velcro on the bottom, so right there and right here. And then on the air and the fuel tank, I added Velcro on the back and then on the bottom. And so the idea is when I slide this in, the Velcro in the back is gonna catch onto that, and then the Velcro on the bottom is gonna catch onto this. So the Velcro on the bottom here prevents the tank from moving this way. The Velcro in the back prevents the tank from going up and down. And then that works together really well with the structure here to keep the tank in place. And so it's removable, and now these blocks, all they're gonna be doing is supporting my tray, and that's it. And that's a much better system, in my opinion, for holding on to the tank, especially when it's got fuel in it. So just thought I'd share that. I should also mention that I've put my vent. The vent that I use is these vents that I get from DreamWorks RC. They're really good because then you can plug into it with a system that they have. So all my jets have this, and I use the same taxi tank, which is awesome. And so that is coming through the bottom, and it's just gonna go and plug into my... So I'm pretty happy with how this came out. So we have the pump, obviously, quick disconnect on the bottom just in case I need to service stuff. To the UAT, This is your fill line coming in from the tank, and then finally from the pump going up into the valve, the shut-off valve, and all the way to the turbine. So